Can I take the leftovers for my daughter? The words cut through the diner like a knife. The woman was on her knees beside his table, not sitting, not standing, on her knees. Her clothes were torn, her face hollow from hunger. In her arms, a little girl, maybe 3 years old. Pale cheeks, tangled hair, eyes too old for her age. The biker stared at the woman kneeling before him. Axel Morgan. Red Wolf to his brothers. Tattoos running down both arms. Scars across his knuckles. A gold cross resting over his chest. A man who looked like he'd lived hard and fought harder. But right now, he couldn't speak. Because the last time he'd seen someone kneel like this, desperate, broken, begging, it was his own wife, 10 years ago. Before she took their daughter and disappeared. And now this stranger was kneeling, asking him for food. What Axel did next would change both their lives forever. It was a chilly afternoon in a small American town where time moved slower. Inside Betty's retro diner, the smell of coffee and bacon filled the air. The jukebox hummed softly. Turquoise walls gleamed under afternoon sunlight streaming through windows. People had been chatting lazily over coffee and pie, until she walked in, or rather, stumbled in. The thin woman in the gray sweater that hung loose over her frail body, torn jeans, mismatched shoes, and the little girl in her arms, shivering despite the warmth of the diner. The woman's eyes had scanned the room quickly, not for a seat, not for a menu, for mercy. The waitress gave her a cautious glance but didn't move. Customers turned their heads briefly before going back to their meals. Only Axel noticed how tightly she held her daughter, how she whispered softly to keep the child calm. She'd walked slowly toward his table, every step weighted with fear and hesitation. Then she'd lowered herself to her knees. The gesture caught everyone's attention. Conversations stopped. Even the jukebox seemed to quiet. Her voice trembled as she looked at the plate in front of him. Axel had barely touched his fries and steak. Steam still rose from his coffee cup. "Can I take the leftovers for my daughter?" The child in her lap pressed her face against her mother's chest, clutching the thin fabric of her sweater. The woman's eyes were red, not just from hunger, but from the humiliation of asking. Axel looked down at his plate, then back at her, and suddenly he was somewhere else, 10 years ago, in his living room. His wife Rachel had been on her knees just like this, not in a diner, in their home, holding their 5-year-old daughter, Maya, begging him to stop the drinking, stop the fighting, stop choosing the motorcycle and the road over his family. "I can't do this anymore, Axel," Rachel had whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Maya needs a father who's here, not one who's always riding away from us." Axel had stood there, silent, angry, too proud to admit she was right, too broken to know how to fix himself. "Then leave," he'd said, voice cold as winter stone. And she did, packed 2 bags, took Maya, walked out that door. He never saw them again. He'd tried to find them, once, twice, 100 times over the years. But Rachel had made sure he couldn't. Changed her name, moved states, vanished like smoke. For 10 years, Axel carried that weight. The image of his wife on her knees, begging him to choose them. The sound of his daughter crying as Rachel carried her away. The last thing Maya had said, "Daddy, don't you love us anymore?" He did. God, he did. But he'd been too late to say it. Every night, riding alone under empty skies, Axel wondered if Maya remembered him. Wondered if Rachel had told her he was a bad man. Wondered if his daughter was safe, fed, happy, or if she was somewhere like this, hungry, scared. with a mother who had to kneel before strangers, and Axel wouldn't be there to help. So when this woman knelt, asking for leftovers for her daughter, Axel didn't just see a stranger. He saw Rachel. He saw Maya. He saw every chance he'd missed to be the man they needed. This time, he wouldn't fail. Without a word, Axel stood up. The woman's eyes widened, thinking she'd angered him. Instead, he pushed his plate gently toward her and walked to the counter. Everyone's gaze followed him as he spoke quietly to the cook, who nodded. Moments later, Axel returned carrying 2 takeout boxes filled with warm food and a bottle of milk. He knelt down beside the woman, lowering himself to her level, a rough, tattooed biker on his knees on a diner floor, face to face with a mother and child. "This isn't leftovers," he said softly, his voice steady but full of emotion. "This is fresh, and there's more if you need it." He placed the boxes in her hands. The woman's lips quivered. She looked down at the food, then up at him, tears spilling over. I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything yet. Just eat." Axel gestured to the booth. "Sit, please." The woman hesitated, then climbed into the seat, her daughter in her lap. The little girl's eyes went wide at the food, like she'd never seen so much at once. "What's your name?" Axel asked gently. "Sarah, and this is Lily." "How long since you ate, Sarah?" She looked down, shame coloring her cheeks. 3 days, maybe 4. Axel's jaw tightened. "Where's her father?" Sarah's voice cracked. "Gone. Left us 6 months ago when the bills got too high. Said he couldn't handle the stress." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, trying to hold herself together. "I had a job. I was a nurse at County General. A good job. I was good at it." She looked at Lily, who was eating fries with tiny, careful bites. But then Lily got sick. Pneumonia. High fever. She was in the hospital for 2 weeks. I couldn't afford childcare and hospital bills, so I stayed home to take care of her when she got out. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. "They fired me for missing too many shifts. Said I wasn't reliable. I tried to explain. Tried to show them her medical records. Tried to tell them I'd make up the hours." Her hands trembled around the coffee cup Axel had pushed toward her. "They didn't care. Just replaced me. Like I didn't matter." She looked out the window, eyes distant. "We lost our apartment last month. Been sleeping in my car when we could afford gas. Then the car broke down yesterday. Just died on the highway." Sarah's voice broke. "I walked here from 2 towns over, 8 miles, carrying her, looking for work, looking for help. But everywhere I go, people see us and turn away. Like we're invisible. Like we don't matter. Like we're not even human anymore." She looked at Axel with desperate, tired eyes. "I wasn't always like this. I had a life. A home. I was someone who helped people. That's why I became a nurse. Now I'm the one begging." Axel felt something twist in his chest. "You're not begging," he said quietly. "You're surviving, for her. That takes more strength than most people will ever know." Sarah looked at Lily, who'd fallen asleep against her chest, still clutching a fry in her small hand. "I just want her to have a chance," Sarah whispered. "A chance I'm not sure I can give her anymore." Axel sat back, his mind racing. This woman, this child, they could have been his family. Could have been Rachel and Maya, desperate and alone somewhere. And where would they be now if no one had helped them? As Axel stood to get more food for them, a voice cut through the diner. "You're encouraging panhandlers now, Red Wolf?" Axel turned slowly. At the counter sat Victor Sterling, local businessman, regular customer. Expensive suit, gold watch, slicked back hair. The kind of man who'd never missed a meal in his life. "She's not a panhandler," Axel said quietly, his voice dangerous. "She's a mother." "She's a bum," Victor scoffed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Give her money, and tomorrow she'll bring 10 more. This is a respectable establishment, not a soup kitchen." The diner went dead silent. Sarah stood up quickly, face burning with shame. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I'll leave." "Sit down," Axel said firmly. Then he walked slowly toward Victor's table. Axel was 6'2", 200 pounds of muscle and scars. Victor suddenly looked very small in his fancy suit. "You see that little girl over there?" Axel said, voice low and controlled but shaking with rage. "She hasn't eaten in 4 days. 4 days. Her mother walked 8 miles carrying her, looking for work, looking for a chance." Victor shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "That's not my problem." "You're wearing a $2,000 suit," Axel continued, taking another step closer. "You drove here in a Mercedes. You just ordered a $40 steak you probably won't finish. And you're worried about one woman getting 1 meal?" Victor's face reddened. "This is a free country. I can say what I want." "You're right," Axel said, leaning down so his face was level with Victor's. "It's a free country. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to buy that woman and her daughter food, as much as they need. And you're going to shut your mouth and mind your own business." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper only Victor could hear. "Because if you don't, I'm going to stand up in this diner and tell everyone here about the time you tried to cheat old Mrs. Patterson out of her house after her husband died. About how you forged documents and tried to steal her property." Victor went white. "You can't. You have no proof." "I have plenty of proof. Try me." Victor looked around frantically. Everyone in the diner was watching him, judging him. He grabbed his briefcase and coat, threw money on the counter, and stormed out without another word. The diner erupted in quiet applause. Someone whistled. The cook gave Axel a thumbs up. Axel turned back to Sarah, who was crying again, but this time it looked like relief. "Nobody talks about my daughter that way," Axel said. Then he paused, his voice softening. "Any daughter?" He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a folded bill, enough for a week's worth of meals. He placed it on the table in front of Sarah. "This is for you and Lily. For food. For whatever you need." Sarah stared at the money, then at Axel, tears streaming down her face. "Why? Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Axel looked at Lily, sleeping peacefully now, her belly finally full. "Because once," he said quietly, "I couldn't help mine." For a long moment, there was silence. The entire diner watched as Sarah clutched the food and money against her chest, whispering thank yous that trembled with gratitude. The other bikers, sitting a few booths away, Axel's brothers from the Iron Wolves MC, turned their eyes down. Some swallowed hard. Some pretended not to wipe their faces. Even the waitress, Martha, who'd stayed still before, came over with a warm cup of cocoa for Lily and a gentle smile for Sarah. Axel sat back down slowly, his heart heavy yet somehow lighter than it had been in years. He watched Sarah gather the food, watched her daughter stir awake with sleepy eyes, watched them leave the diner with hope, where there'd been only despair before. The sound of the diner returned, faint murmurs, clinking dishes, but something had changed. Kindness had filled the room like sunlight breaking through clouds after a storm. That night, As Axel rode his motorcycle home under the fading light, he felt something warm in his chest. Maybe it was hope, maybe forgiveness. The wind whipped past him, carrying away years of regret he'd worn like armor. Somewhere out there, he hoped Maya was safe, maybe even being cared for by someone kind, someone who believed that a single act of compassion could change everything. But 3 weeks later, something happened that Axel never expected. He walked into Betty's diner for his usual coffee, and Sarah was there. But this time she wasn't kneeling. She wasn't begging. She was standing behind the counter wearing a waitress uniform. Her hair was pulled back neatly. Her face had color again. She looked healthy, alive. And beside her, playing with crayons at a corner table, was Lily. Happy, healthy, laughing. Axel stopped in his tracks, stunned. Martha, the diner owner, noticed him staring and walked over with a smile. "I hired her," Martha said. "After what you did that day, I figured the least I could do was give her a chance. Turns out she's the best waitress I've had in years. Hard worker. Kind to everyone. The customers love her." Sarah looked up and saw Axel. Her eyes filled with tears. She walked over quickly. "You came back." "Just wanted coffee," Axel said gruffly, uncomfortable with emotion. Sarah smiled, a real, genuine smile. "The coffee's on me. For life." She poured him a cup, her hands steady now, strong. "I got an apartment," she said quietly, sitting down across from him. "Nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom. But it's ours. It's warm. It's safe." She glanced at Lily, who was coloring a picture of a flower. "Lily's back in daycare. She's healthy. Happy. I've got 3 job interviews next week for nursing positions at different hospitals, and it's all because you didn't look away." Axel stared into his coffee, jaw tight. "I looked away once before. Cost me everything." Sarah reached across the table and gently touched his hand. "Your daughter?" "Maya. She was 5 when her mother left with her. 10 years ago. Do you know where they are?" "No. Rachel made sure I couldn't find them. Changed everything. Disappeared." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said softly, "Then find them now." Axel looked up. "What?" "Find them now. Not with anger, not with pride. With this." She gestured to the diner, to Lily, to herself. "Show her who you've become, not who you were." Axel's throat tightened. What if she doesn't want to see me? What if she hates me? Then at least you tried. At least she'll know you cared enough to look, that you changed, that you grew. Don't let fear steal your second chance. That night, Axel sat in his small apartment staring at his laptop. For the first time in 10 years, he typed his daughter's name into the search bar. Maya Morgan. His hands shook as he hit enter, and he found her. Facebook profile, 16 years old now, smiling in her profile picture, alive, beautiful, living 3 states away with Rachel. Axel's heart pounded as he stared at the screen. His daughter, his little girl, not so little anymore. His hand hovered over the keyboard for what felt like hours. Then he typed, "Maya, this is your father. I know I have no right to reach out after all these years. I know I failed you. I know I made mistakes that hurt you and your mother. But I want you to know that I never stopped thinking about you. Not for a single day. And I'm sorry. For everything. For not being the father you deserved. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I'll always be here. Love, Dad." He hit send before he could change his mind. For 3 days, nothing. Axel checked his messages every hour, every minute. Nothing. Then, on the 3rd day, a notification appeared. New message from Maya Morgan. Axel's hands shook as he clicked it. Dad? Is that really you? Axel stared at the screen, tears streaming down his face, unable to type for a full minute. Finally, he wrote back, Yeah, kiddo. It's really me. Another message appeared almost immediately. I thought you forgot about me. Axel's heart shattered. Never. Not for 1 second. I've been looking for you for 10 years. A pause. Then, can we talk? Like really talk? Anytime. Anywhere. I'll be there. And for the first time in 10 years, Axel Morgan believed in second chances. Not just for the people he helped, but for himself. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe to Iron Brotherhood Stories for more tales where compassion changes everything. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done in Axel's place? Would you have helped Sarah? Would you have searched for your daughter? Sometimes one act of courage doesn't just change a life, it saves two. And sometimes, the people who look the hardest on the outside carry the softest hearts within. That's the brotherhood. That's the code. That's what it means to ride with honor.